I'm Fred Kagan, resident scholar and director of the Critical Threats Project at the American Enterprise Institute. And my question is, the raid that killed Osama bin Laden was obviously an important success in the struggle against al-Qaeda, although it also drove U.S. relations with Pakistan to a new low. Do you think that an expanded drone campaign in Pakistan would be sufficient to defeat al-Qaeda and to secure our interests in Pakistan?
Governor Huntsman.
Let me just say that as we talk about foreign policy, let's be reminded that in order to have an effective foreign policy, we need a Washington that works. Today we have a president who can't lead. We have a Congress that can't even figure out how to balance our budget. They need term limits, by the way. We've got to get our house in order. Thank you. We've got to get our house in order if we're going to expect to get anything done overseas, because when our light shines, we can influence the rest of the world. Pakistan is a concern. That's the country that ought to keep everybody up at night. You have not President Zardari in charge, but General Kiani over the military, which also is responsible for ISI. You've got the youngest demographic of the 160 million people in Pakistan. You've got a madrasa movement. You've got over 100 nuclear weapons. You've got trouble on the border. You've got a nation state that is a candidate for failure. And I say it's a haven for bad behavior. It's a haven for training. The people who seek to do us harm, and an expanded drone program is something that would serve our national interest. I think it must be done, and I think it must be consistent with recognizing the reality on the ground of what we need out of Afghanistan. We don't need 100,000 troops in Afghanistan. We don't need a nation build in Afghanistan when this nation so desperately needs to be built.
We're going to get to Afghanistan.
We need something.
Congresswoman Bachmann, let me bring you in. You're a member.
Special forces and drones.
All right, you're a member of the Intelligence Committee. Well, do you think, as Governor Perry has said, that Pakistan should no longer receive U.S. aid because they've shown they're not a good friend, ally of the United States?
Pakistan has been the epicenter of dealing with terrorism. They are, as Governor Huntsman said, there are al-Qaeda training grounds there. There's also the Haqqani network that can be trained there as well. And they also are one of the most violent, unstable nations that there is. We have to recognize that 15 of the sites, nuclear sites, are available or are potentially penetrable by jihadists. 6 attempts have already been made on nuclear sites. This is more than an existential threat. We have to take this very seriously. The United States has to be engaged. It is complicated. We have to recognize that the Chinese are doing everything that they can to be an influential party in Pakistan. We don't want to lose influence. I'm answering your question. You asked me about the money that the United States gives to Pakistan. This is a dual answer. A nation that lies, that does everything possibly that you could imagine wrong. At the same time, they do share intelligence data with us regarding al-Qaeda. We need to demand more. The money that we are sending right now is primarily intelligence money to Pakistan. It is helping the United States. Whatever our action is, it must ultimately be about helping the United States and our sovereignty, our safety, and our security.
You would continue that aid to Pakistan?
At this point, I would continue that aid, but I do think that the Obama policy of keeping your fingers crossed is not working in Pakistan. And I also think that Pakistan is a nation that it's kind of like too nuclear to fail. And so we've got to make sure that we take that threat very seriously.
Governor Perry.
I understand where she's coming from, but the bottom line is that they've showed us time after time that they can't be trusted. And until Pakistan clearly shows that they have America's best interest in mind, I would not send them 1 penny, period. I think it is important for us to send a message to those across the world that if you are not going to be an ally of the United States, do not expect a dime of our citizens' money to be coming into your country. That is the way we change foreign policy. Now, if we want to engage these countries with our abilities and our companies that go in and help to economically build these countries up rather than just writing a blank check to them, then we can have that conversation, because I think that is a change in foreign policy that would be adequate and appropriate and a positive move for us. But to write a check to countries that are clearly not representing American interest is nonsensical.
You want to respond, Congresswoman Bachmann?
Well, with all due respect to the governor, I think that's highly naive because, again, we have to recognize what's happening on the ground. These are nuclear weapons all across this nation, and potentially al-Qaeda could get a hold of these weapons. These weapons could find their way out of Pakistan into New York City or into Washington, D.C., and a nuclear weapon could be set off in this city. That's how serious this is. We have to maintain an American presence. They certainly aren't looking out for the best interests of the United States. I wouldn't expect them to. But at the same time, we have to have our interest, which is national security, represented. The best way we can do that with an uneven actor state is to have some sort of presence there.
I just want to give Governor Perry the chance to respond. She just said your views were highly naive.
And we need to be engaged in that part of the world. I never said for us not to be engaged. I just said we need to quit writing blank checks to these countries and then letting them decide how these dollars are going to be spent. We've got Afghanistan and India working in concert right now to leverage Pakistan. I think if we would create a trade zone in that part of the world where you have all of those countries working together, that may be the answer to getting Pakistan to understand that they have to work with all of the countries in that region.
All right, I want to move on. You'll have a chance to respond. Very quickly.
If I can just clarify, we're not writing just blank checks. We're also exchanging intelligence information, so we aren't writing blank checks in that region.
Let's take another question from the audience, please.